How are you doing this morning? I'm Dr. Paul. Welcome to the Healthy Mind. I'll be right with you as we all log on. A little bit of a short delay here. Good morning. Good morning. We're going to be going over the Healthy Mind this morning. How are you doing? Welcome. Good morning, Instagram. Welcome to the Healthy Mind. I'm just going to wait till all these guys log on. Facebook seems to be a little bit slow today. That's all right. Have your coffee, sit back. If you have any questions on the Healthy Mind, just inbox me and I should read it as I'm going along with the show. I don't know what's going on with Facebook. So, as I'm waiting for Facebook to log on, I will just start talking about. So, we were talking about loneliness all week. And loneliness, we've all experiencing, especially with the self-isolation. I think I'm just having connection problems, is what I'm doing. So sorry about that, Instagram. I'm just gonna wait for all these other guys log on, and here it is. I think it just popped. I'm running off my server, so it's a little bit slow. So thank you for being patient with me. As again, like I said, as the system starts to pop up, I'll be right with you. Instagram, you're always on first because you're quicker. The way I log in on there, it's just a little bit fast. I don't know what's going on here with Facebook. So let's just get started because it'll just go. I don't want to keep messing with this. It's kind of it's a little bit of a distraction. Facebook will get it later. So the healthy mind is about understanding the mind and our emotions. Okay, so as we start the healthy mind, we've been doing it all week, and this week we were talking over loneliness. Loneliness plays a big part of what we're experiencing, and I think what we're experiencing in this time of self isolation, that we're feeling separate, right? So there's certain things that we're always going to feel separate about, and that's just because of how we're thinking. I'll get to the board later. Um, what do you know about loneliness? How do you feel that when you're lonely? How do you understand loneliness? And that's huge to understand. Like, where am I in the field of being alone or having loneliness, or being subjecticated to what we think what lonely is? Because being alone we know that being alone is different than loneliness. But here I like to throw a little twist to that. Sometimes, and I know this is so general because when I'm working with people, it's very specific. You can want to be alone because you're lonely. And so your ego will never want you to feel like you need someone besides ego itself. Okay? And that's difficult. And that is difficult. If you feel like you are wanting to be alone because your ego says don't have these abandonment issues, so you're really having loneliness. And you can always choose to be alone, right? And then that's not what we're stopping people. We're not trying to stop a person from wanting to be alone and needing that solitude. But you definitely have to understand in the healthy mind, like, who's choosing what. The I in front of ego is choosing it, or is ego in front of I? Because if we've heard this phrase, like, so a lover leaves you, or a person leaves you, or whoever leaves you that you were very close to, and you're like, you know what, I don't need them. That is not the same as mutual distancing from each other, and you're like, we're going our separate ways. Someone left, and now you're saying, I don't need you. So your body still has the effect of being separated, even though you want to have the words of being defending against the separation. So if just because you verbally said, your thoughts and your brain are chemically reacting to the separation. And there goes the sadness, there goes the abandonment, there goes rejection, there goes sadness, sorrow, disengagement, right? Nervousness, worry. You start to develop all these phrases, grief. And this is what this is. This is all part of that grief that we have been experiencing, that we never knew that someone ever taught us how to experience grief. No one has ever told us that grief is a process of a new normal. No one's ever taught us that as you're going through life, there's going to be separation between you and someone else. And you and someone else, it feels not so good. Thank you. I just got Facebook on. I was having problems with Facebook, so now I see you. Hello, honey, how you doing? So when we are talking about that separation, and we're talking about that abandonment issue, can we also talk about betrayal? This has everything to do with the emotional code of loneliness. If you have betrayal, right, love unreceived, you're then going to fall into loneliness, which is separated from being alone. Ask yourself, and you have to ask yourself, and this is where it comes down here to consciousness. You can rewrite your subconscious behavior by understanding your mind. Just because someone leaves you doesn't mean you don't want them around. I know you want to have a defense going, well, I'm better off without them. I never needed them anyway. Even if it's in an abusive relationship, you were feeding a central part of your brain, of the pleasure center. You will keep going back to that for whatever reason. That's why a lot of people keep going back to bad relationships, because somehow that dopamine is getting fed from a chemical that you are trying to receive from that relationship. It may be bad, meaning it's physical, abusive and all, yes. And that's why it's very difficult for people to leave bad situations, is because it's triggering in the central cortex of the pleasure center of the brain. Because rationality, like, what's rational? You like being bruised, you like being beaten, no. Because the rational mind goes out because of fear. Fear is down here. Fear rational will never beat fear. Rational thinking never beats fear, because rational thinking, you have to stay into the frontal cortex of the brain, where you are an active thinker. Fear is in the rear reptilian part of our brain, which is back in the amygdala, right? So when we're talking about loneliness, it triggers fear. So now you will work into what you call that survival mode thinking to get rid of your loneliness feeling, and now you're fighting with fear. It's so tricky, because things happen to us that we're just so sad about. We're just so unhealthy feeling about, because we never knew what those feelings were supposed to be. We never had an idea that feeling this type of way is okay. So when we are feeling this loneliness, understand it. Go through it. Think about it. Because some people want to isolate you, all for themselves. They want to isolate you. They want to mistreat you. They want to only give you a construct that they want for you to be in. And then for you to pull away from that creates loneliness for yourself. Because if you're saying, well, it's a bad idea. Well, someone should not try to do that to other people. What kind of companies do it? Our bosses do it. If you work for someone, they separate you. Why? Because they give you a different position. You start to, because remember, for us not to feel lonely, because we are communicative animals. And even if a boss gives you the promotion, it removes you from the group into maybe another group. And hopefully you fit into that group. See, we're all trying to fit into these small groups. These small little sections, my family, my neighborhood, my state. It's called toxic tribalism. We're falling into toxic tribalism, and it's causing us to now fight ourselves and fight one another. You don't belong in my tribe. I belong in this tribe. Which tribe is better? Which team is better? Remember, out of the 100 trillion cells, our mind is what's the governors. Our mind governs the 100 trillion cells. Because look at yourself in a single cell organism, because each cell has its own brain, has its own connectors, has its own function. Together, it works together to produce X or Y in the body. You're the same way. You're your own cell. You have your own mind. You have your own vibrations. You have your own energy. You have your own wave production. And when you connect with another, you're that much stronger. When you feel separated from the other, then you either get sick, fall into despair, or loneliness, right? And this is what loneliness is. When you have loneliness and you're feeling lonely, and remember, there's a difference between being alone and loneliness. DNA repair goes down. That means genetics are the markers are changing, right? This falls into called epigenetics, right? Cortisol goes up. Dr. Paul, how do you know the difference between being lonely and being alone? I had that question, and it's a great question. And I'll tell you how I feel how you can tell the difference. What does your heart feel like? Does your heart still radiate love? Does your heart still produce joy? That's how you can tell. If your heart is feeling heavy, like it feels like it's not radiating. Because even when you are alone, your heart radiates out and in. The first connection we must have, it seems simple, is the connection to oneself. It seems simple, but the first connection we must have is the connection to oneself. When you have that connection with yourself, then you can feel if you're being alone or it's loneliness. Want triggers this also. Wanting to not, wanting to be, wanting to have, wanting to. Once you say I want and then ... you're going to trigger loneliness and separation. How does that? Because if I want this cup and the cup is there, we're separated. I'm separated from the cup. I now have the cup. My wants are now covered. That's survival thought. Think about it. If you want something, your body's going into survival mode. And if it's going into survival mode, then fear will be all in your grill. Right? Fight, flight, or freeze. That animalistic behavior, that subconscious, the lowest part of consciousness that you could ever have. It's just, I just need to survive. Want does survival. Need does survival. Understanding The reason of going to cup, understanding why I'm with this cup, because if you don't understand what your thought process is, 95% of consciousness is running your life. You can rewrite that 95%. Once you start being actively thinking now, 5% changes to 90%. 5% of consciousness change to 90% when you're active participating in the thoughts and the feelings of now. We're not talking about not remembering something. We're talking about actively thinking and breathing and producing love now. Ask yourself, if you're doing something, is love your premise? You can hear these crazy thoughts thinking that as long as good comes out of it, it was worth doing. Who's good? Because we can get into a morality issue. So when you also have loneliness, you have spine increased activity because the body wants to stay connected to itself. Because when you have loneliness, the nerve system separates from itself. It starts to decrease in the firing of the neurons. That's why neural activity goes down. The vagus nerve, we know it's the longest nerve in the body. We talked about this yesterday. And it goes into your gut. That's why your gut starts to feel sick when you are lonely. And loneliness sets in. Even if you stop wanting to, now guess what your brain wants to do? Your brain is going to keep activating that vagus nerve and it's going to keep causing that sickness. Your mind is going to say, I don't want you to feel sick anymore, so let me block out and dull that pain. So it gets you distracted other than yourself. You start to fall victim and prey to something that you have no control over, because now your monkey mind, the mother mind, you remember your mind, if you don't understand what your mind is doing, your mind is the most overbearing, protective, whatever in history, because it does not want you to feel pain and sorrow. So it will block out different signals of internal pain, which causes external action of badness. That's why I do the healthy mind. Understanding what one's thoughts are creates a better body function. Rewriting the consciousness, rewriting the subconsciousness is really what I want to say there. The only way to rewrite subconsciousness is to act in love. It seems simple, but we're going to go through separation. We're going to go through breakups. We're going to go through things not being in the place that we thought it should be. And once you think your thoughts are supposed to be in a certain place, that hurts. But is it hurting you in the ego form, or is it hurting you in the I form? Yeah, it could. Hurt happens when you love. That's it. Hurt happens when you love. Tomorrow, Saturday, I go over the active meditation. I hope you had a good week and understanding what loneliness is and what it's attacking. I think we're all remember that also loneliness also affects our organs. It affects our heart. It affects our small intestines. It affects our spleen, our stomach, our lung, and our colon. It does different things with digestive systems. So all these things of loneliness affects and triggers the body. And remember, 90%, do I have it up here? 90% of sicknesses is caused by our thoughts and our emotions. 90%, it's been tested. That's why placebo effect works. 90% of sickness is caused by our thoughts and our emotions. 90%. Because, as you know, if you're in thoughts of sickness, your DNA repair goes down. That means your body will become sicker with whatever infection it has, because your body's always fighting infection, fighting viruses. That's what white blood cells do, right? It's doing its job. Cortisol goes up, DNA repair goes down, just because your thoughts and of your emotions you're creating sickness in your body. Let's see. I'm just checking to make sure I don't miss any questions here before I log off here for today. I want you to know that we may be social distancing. We may social distance even with we're with someone. Ask yourself, why are you distancing yourself? Just don't become distant from yourself. Understand why you choose what you choose and how you choose it. Because this can also fall into a moral issue of someone did something to me, or you're doing something to yourself. And you being part of a group, we know we're social animals, being part of a group makes us healthier, but which group are you a part of and why? Just because I don't think an antelope want to be part of a lion's group, even though it's a big herd, right? Eventually it's going to get turned on. You got to be comfortable where you are, and I think the only way to do that is to feel comfortable, is to understand you are loved. You cherish your love, you know you're loved, you be loved, and you give love to all people, to all things that matter. I wish you a great Friday. If you want to join me tomorrow for We School in the morning, we're going over meditation. We're going over the active part of meditation. Thank you, and God bless.